Hey y'all, I'm Dani. It's good to see everyone both in person and joining on Zoom today. I'm here to sell you guys on a whole new Bitcoin. You know, I think you guys could make it rich, and I'm thinking of NF Tarot, you know, like tarot cards, NFTs. Actually, no, that's not why I'm here today. I'm a professional journalist. I used to sit in those very chairs and bitch about the Board of Regents. And then somebody hired me, and that was a mistake. So I'm a reporter now for El Paso Matters. I cover environment and local government, and I'm here to talk about a couple of techniques today. I'm going to go over three subjects here. Interview techniques 102, like just some of the things that I wish I'd known as a college journalist. Talking a little bit quickly about on the record, off the record, when to use it, why. And then corrections, clarifications, and responding to the public, our favorite thing when you get those emails. So really quickly, let's talk interview techniques. Something that I've recently been incorporating into mine is at a point in the interview, either at the beginning or the end, especially when it's a first-time interviewee, somebody that doesn't often talk to reporters. I've been finding it useful to ask them if they have any questions for me in the process. So instead of explaining to them exactly what I do or giving sort of a speech at the beginning, I find that helps move the conversation along. It helps them with, okay, hey, how does this work? Like, when do I know when it's going to come out? Or when do I, how do I know what quotes you're going to use? Or can I see the article beforehand? A total no-no, but at that point, it's easier to sort of have that discussion, I feel like. And also, I get some really awesome chances to talk about things I didn't expect to when I asked them, hey, do you have any questions for me? Or what are some thoughts here? So I found that to be something that's really opening up my ability to better, I think, communicate what our job is, which I think is key in a lot of these interviews. Another thing is as you may have read the article Complicating the Narrative, which is asking about what better questions can be asked sources to get at better, not better quotes, but actual better issues. And one of those I find is if you have, say, a contentious issue where there is maybe one side or another, a great question to ask people is, why do you think your opponent holds that viewpoint? Asking them to put themselves in that opponent's shoes and saying, why do you think they think that way? And again, it doesn't work for all things, right? Not all issues are equal, not all sides are equal, but I do find it does elaborate on empathy and humanity, and those things can sort of break down some of the, well, they're just this way, and they're just that way. And so that can get at something better in your interviews if you're just looking for a way to break through, I think. Another key one is they didn't answer the question, right? You're sitting there, you've asked the question, they didn't answer it. And I'm begging of you, and this is something that I have to work on, it's something that we all work on, but I'm begging you, re-ask that question. Do not let them not answer your question. And at some points too, it's best to just say a statement like, that doesn't answer the question. It may feel a little bit combative, but I'm telling you, it is better to sit down and listen to a quote that you actually get that answers your question than sitting there and being like, I have no idea what the hell this means. So those are just some of the basic 102 things that I would say that maybe can take your interview into the next level. Again, just offering an opportunity to have a discussion about the way that this work is going to be used and published. Asking a reframing question to break through a polarizing issue, right? And then again, just re-ask the question, ask it a different way or ask it the same way again, because there's no reason why, you should accept an answer that doesn't get to the meat of the problem here. Okay, so how comfortable do people feel, just raise your hand generally, and you can put some emojis in the chat, right? How comfortable are you with the idea of on the record, off the record in your guys' classes? Okay, I see an iffy, I see an iffy, I see some iffy. Okay, great. So, as a journalist, you kind of operate in this quasi-public persona, right? You're trying to be available for anyone to reach out and talk to you. And so then there's these questions of, you're writing a story about something, somebody tells you something, when do you put it in the story, right? We make those decisions all the time when you're cutting quotes that don't really say anything, when you're paraphrasing things to make things make more sense. But then there's this sort of rule that we have, right, which is on the record, off the record, and on background, are like sort of the three categories. So oftentimes PIOs will just immediately say something to you to say, this is off the record, and then they just say something. And a PIO, again, a public information officer, just in case I'm not jargoning here. And so I just want to be clear here that on the record and off the record is a tool for you to use. It is a way for us to, it's a way for us to use like a series of things, right? It's a way to confirm something. If you have a source that knows something and they're not allowed to tell you because of the rules of their job, and like you trust them, you can say something is off the record, right? Which means you don't publish it, it's for your knowledge only, but it's a way to confirm something. So you can write that sentence in that article that says, this is X, right? X is true, because you confirmed it, right? So that's one use of off the record. I would also say off the record is an important tool for people who are, you know, like traumatized, right? Like, if you are especially explaining to a person a first time, like if they are saying, okay, you know, this teacher retaliated against me, right? That's a good use of off the record, is saying, I'm not gonna expose you maybe to that public sort of scrutiny here, like, but you can tell me these things, right? And know that they're not going to go into the public sphere. These are important tools for us to maintain trust with people, but they're often abused by people who are paid to be getting messages out, like public information officers. They'll often say something like, off the record, and then they'll tell you the truth, right? Like, and it's like, off the record does not give you give you permission to lie to me. And so I have a fairly strict position that I had to develop on my own in sort of newsrooms where like, we don't talk about this, I feel like, enough as like professional journalists. Like, what's our policy here on abusing and using on the record and off the record? And so I had to develop this on my own, but I'm hoping that you guys can have this discussion as a newsroom about like saying that, you know, when someone talks to me, right, whenever people send me an email, right, even if they say off the record in the email, that's not how that works. It's an agreement between the two of us to say like, okay, I agree, you can tell me something that's only for my knowledge. But what I feel like this gets at is like, because we have a responsibility to the public, right, we have a duty to be telling the public what we know. That's where exclusivity, right, gets in, right? That's where access journalism gets in, because you feel like you're in the know, and that's what PIOs try and use against you, is being like, well, I'll tell you this because, you know, I trust you, but like, we don't want this getting out, right? This impacts our message. And so that's why I always have a rule that a PIO, when you call me, when you talk to me, you're supposed to know better. Like, nothing we say between us is off the record, because your job, right, is to tell me what's going on. So those are just like a quick basic there. I know it might like run into some journalism ethics, but like this is a key part of holding ourselves accountable, because people will use us all the time to say like, oh, well, I can tell you that, but don't tell anybody else. And like, that's part of our job, is to keep things in confidence. We don't reveal our sources. We protect people who are vulnerable, but like, we don't get exploited. Like, that's where we have to really consider what we're doing. Okay, corrections, clarifications, and responding to the public. My God, I wish we talked about this in J school more. Like, it's that and taxes. Like, how do you do your taxes when you're a freelancer? Like, swear to God, like that's what you should be asking your professors. But not that you should listen to what I have to say. Don't listen to authority. But correction, clarifications, and responding to the public. If you read the New York Times, if you open the A2 on the New York Times today, somebody got a date wrong, somebody got a name wrong, somebody got an assistant professor rather than an associate professor, you will see it happen. You don't love it. You don't love it when someone calls you and they're like, your bad handwriting misspelled my name, right? Like, just because you can't tell the difference between an E and an O, like my name was misspelled. And so like, that's why we work extremely hard to get those little details right? I mean, it's like the basis of credibility here. You're saying, I care enough to get these little details right. But I will say, you can open any major newspaper in any, like New York Times, does not matter. Like somebody somewhere got the date wrong, the time wrong, the title wrong, the name wrong. It happens. Those corrections are going to happen. And I think we need to talk about them more because like you never want to get things wrong as a journalist. Like you're here to get things right, you're here to do it right. But like we can't, like the good thing about corrections is like it's holding us accountable. We're saying we get it wrong. And not only do we say we get it wrong, we publish it and we say this is how we make it right. So I want like people to not freak out over like corrections like that. I want you to track them. I want you to think, okay, is this because I'm not listening back to the recording? You know, when people are actually spelling their names for me and I'm just like reading my bad handwriting, do I need to like fix my process here? These are like really good reflections for us. The big stuff is what I want to talk about a little bit more. When a reader emails you, right? And we're gonna use a couple of examples that we had at the Lobo in my time. We published a story using the headline marijuana, right? And like we got emails, right? We got emails from grad students from here to there, right? Like, how can you be using this racist term, right? Like, what are you thinking? Like, it's not correct. Like, and so we had to have a discussion as a newsroom, like, okay, what do we need to do about this, right? And so the key points here for every correction that you're gonna get, whether it's a member of the public, some PIO calling you being like, you got my story wrong, like, or like an angry politician, right? Every single time, the first rule is listen, and it sucks. Someone's gonna yell at you, right? Oftentimes over email or over the phone, and the key part is listening first. Saying, okay, like, what's the problem here? Finding the key component, what's the problem here? The second key component is it an actual factual correction, right? Did you misspell someone's name? Factual correction, we issue correction, it's done. Does someone who gets paid to speak for, say, the university, disagree with the language that you used? That's not a factual correction. I have a key one here, which was, there was a use of reduction in force, right? So PIOs were like, okay, at this school district, we're gonna have a reduction in force. And what they actually meant was voluntary layoffs, right? So we used voluntary layoffs in the headline, reduction in force. You can't let these people who are paid, right, who are getting yelled at by their bosses to tell you, like, okay, you got it wrong because you didn't use our jargony language here, right? Our job is to say things in key, yes or no, what does this mean? We say it clearly, right, when they refuse to. Jargony language is used to obfuscate, right? It is used to, like, confuse and, like, sorry, I just get angry. Anyway, it's used to confuse and obfuscate here. And we don't do that. So that's the key point, is asking again and again, often, using that technique of asking again and again, is there a factual problem with my article? Did we get something factually incorrect, materially incorrect? And often they're like, well, no, I just didn't like the way you portrayed it. Like, I just didn't like the way you portrayed it, right? And that is not enough for a correction. So then we also have clarifications, right? It's just, okay, did I say something like unclearly that could mislead the reader, right? And those are really where your editor has to get in there, right? Like, I mean, this is really a discussion between you and the editor of like, how clear were we? Did people misinterpret this? So, I hope that a little bit of this can be like a good discussion fodder. I also want to say for for femmes and non-gender conforming people in the room, like, I want you specifically to realize that the targeted emails at you, which especially about your appearance, about your stupidity, right? You do not ever have to answer those. Not once, not ever. And for all of you in the room, you never have to feed the trolls. I mean, you do not have to read comments and like and respond to them directly, unless it is a material correction in your article. I really want to like emphasize this difference. There is a difference between people reaching out to you because they're frustrated with your article and they want to talk to you about it, versus people who like have nothing better to do in their lives than to literally pick apart the use of lay versus lie in a lead about a man who sexually assaulted an 8-year-old child. Like the lives that some people do not have is incredible. So I just want to say here, like, we are able and like encouraged to like engage in uncomfortable discourse. Sometimes people are really rude about your articles, but they have good points. And I'm saying like there is certainly balance here. But I worry that in J school we don't teach like what should we do about responding to emails? What should we do about engaging with the public who doesn't like our article? What should we do when people say, okay, well, I didn't agree with you about the way that you portrayed that? Because my fear is a lot of times there's a knee-jerk reaction to be like, oh my God, I was wrong, right? Or, oh my God, like maybe they're right. Maybe they're right that like I should have used reduction in force instead of layoffs. Maybe that's too strong a word. But I hope that we can have like this engaging in discussion and saying like, how do we learn how to trust ourselves, right? And be clear and concise and like really, truly standing behind our work, right? Like, because it is being attacked sort of from all different levels and sides, right? You have institutional attacks and you have personal attacks. But I hope that we can engage a little bit more here in the question and answers afterwards. So that's all I have for the training portion in terms of like, these are some of my thoughts here that I would love to hear more from y'all in the question and answer section. So, I'm open.
Well, I have a question about on the record, off the record. Because a lot of times when I'm in phone calls, people will go, oh, this is off the record, and then never clarify when they're coming back on the record, and I wonder how you initiate that sort of conversation.
Yeah, so one of the things I lay down is like, I lay down a lot of times in my interviews is I say, okay, anything you say to me at this moment has the chance of going in the newspaper. If you would like to go off the record for any reason, you can do that at the end of this phone call, right? And then I give them a chance and an opportunity to go off the record, but I also like to clarify, like, you can't just like switch something on and off without my permission here. Like, this is really something that we have to engage in. And so, you know, I try and that's why I try and lay it out as clearly as possible. Anything you say to me right now has a chance of going in the newspaper. If you want to go off the record, that's something that I agree to.
And do you say that at the beginning of every single interview, or do you pick and choose?
It's tough, right? You know, some days like when I'm doing an interview about like what's going on with the libraries, right? I don't usually have to, I don't have to usually tell the librarian at that point, you know, anything you say. But then sometimes I do, right? I mean, sometimes you just never know what people actually want to say to you. Like, again, use that opportunity to say something without consequence, right? And that's where I really want to be careful here about on and off the record is because there's, in interviewing, there's often this like need for politeness from everyone, right? And so there's this effort to, especially with off the record, there's like this removal of discomfort. And like, I don't necessarily like that, right? It's about familiarity, right? And that oftentimes can be used like to win you over, right? To let you feel like you have an intimate relationship with a person, right? And I don't know if that's always the thing that, I don't know if they've earned that, right? Like, I don't know if people who get paid for a living to talk like to the media get that sort of opportunity with us, right? I feel like that's access, right? I feel like they're getting access to like an important and key like tool that we have to protect usually vulnerable people. I hope that helped.
Yeah, so like a department of a organization with your experience go on record, is that different from like a team?
It depends, right? And I hate being like, oh, it's so interview to interview. But usually, yeah, I usually disagree with that. I usually disagree with people being able to just like, especially in positions of power, just being able to say, hey, whatever, like, I'm gonna say something here and you can't hold me accountable. And that's this is a really key thing, is like, so often they're using that as a point to say, well, here's the real truth, right? We hate that guy.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
And that's frustrating. And so I'm not, like, I think that's why we should talk about it more, is because, like, that's a key part of our reporting process. Like, off the record is really key, I think, to getting sometimes at the heart of an issue and being able to confirm really sensitive information. But I think, especially in college, like, I mean, the provost all the time would be like, here's an on the record chat, and then off the record would just spill all these beans that were like seriously incriminating here. Like, we're talking about like, oh yeah, we put that guy on leave. I mean, that's just like unfair, because I think they're taking advantage of not like, because again, y'all are real journalists, and don't let anybody tell you no, because you would just have it twice as hard because you're also in school. But I think they take advantage of like our teachers not telling us about like what on the record and off the record means, and when we should use it, and what institutional accountability and backing we have, right? I mean, I sometimes used to blame it on the Lobo all the time, of saying like, no, you can't go off the record. You know, that's just like, that's my editor, right? And feel free to use that.
Yeah.
So, hoping that helped.
How do you, like, because you talked about how, like, the jargon that certain organizations use, how do you interpret that? How do you take something and then actually kind of weed through it, I guess?
That's where peers are key. Like, that is where peers and editors are key. I mean, and sitting with the story, right? Like, and again, some days you're on deadline, you should have really turned it around 4 hours ago, but here we are, 9 o'clock at night. But that is like one of the key points of our jobs, right? Is literally taking this stuff that they're like shoving down our throats about what they say that they're doing, and trying to literally translate it into actual public concepts. And that, I think, is talking about it. That's talking through your stories. That's, and again, there's only so much before research you can do, right? But that is really what it is about. It is about being prepared in that interview to then ask them, what does that mean? And I use that question all the time. I say, I don't know what that means. Because one of the problems too, especially in academia, right, you feel like, God, maybe I should know what that means. And you don't have to. Like, ask them straight out, what does that mean? And oftentimes, they can't tell you. And I think that is key, is they might not even know what that means. So I am a big fan of the stupid question in the middle, and sometimes interrupting, right? I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. What do you mean by, structured, like you're gonna restructure the fee system here? Does that mean we have to pay more? Like, asking the dumb question all the time is key here, because it's not dumb. Like, they want, like, I say they, right, and I do mean oftentimes institutions want you to feel like you're dumb for asking that question. Like, we're doing the best thing we can for you, right? And they don't like getting the question asked, and so that's why it's key to keep asking it. I'm also very adversarial, and that's why I'm a journalist, so thank you. I have a massive problem with authority, so anyway, blame my mom. Another key tactic, right? You guys used it on me really well. Silence in your interview. You don't know what they're saying? Like, stop talking. Just keep waiting. They'll fill the silence, just like I did. God, you guys are good. Wow.
Anything on Zoom? Well, I think last chance for any more last minute questions.
Y'all can ask me about anything now. This is free and open, any questions about journalism gigs, emails? Yeah.
You mentioned taxes earlier.
Yes. Okay, as a freelancer, y'all have to file quarterly. Like, you have to pay taxes quarterly. Like, they don't tell you that stuff. Like, and also as a freelancer, you usually don't get withholding. So, like, you have to calculate it yourself, and you have to take that freaking 8% out of your own taxes. So, like, they don't tell you that. That is, like, getting set up for tax fraud. The IRS has enough money to go after, you know, like, people who make a lot less money. They don't have time to go after billionaires. That's y'all. Like, the IRS doesn't mess around. I forgot to pay taxes in 2019, but I fixed it. It's fine. But I'm saying, like, that's one of the key problems in J school is, like, they do not tell you about taxes. You have to ask for, like, sometimes it's a C10 form when you're getting a grant. Your grant money, you guys, if you're applying for a grant, you can apply for the amount of your taxes. Like, you can add a line item that says, here's how much my taxes would be affected by this grant money. I did not know that I had to call an accountant. So I'm just saying, key point, ask your teachers about taxes.
Are there any like online resources or anything that you use to help with that?
Yes, there is this guy who blogs, it's called Tax Blog, and he blogs about taxes for bloggers, which was extremely helpful for, like, because I'm considering starting, you know, an additional little side project where we talk about UNM athletics, but it's gonna be for a different day. But I was like, God, do I have to pay taxes if I, like, get 10 cents on, like, an ad revenue, right? So thank God for that guy. Anyway, he does talk about freelancing and blogging taxes quite a bit. Very helpful. Also, if you are a freelancer, just would consider getting a professional, like, for sure. You pay $100, but, like, that $100 means that you don't have to figure out your taxes every quarter. Okay.
You passionate about taxes?
Okay, I care about not. Okay, I am passionate about taxes, but I also care. I care about, yeah, I do care about taxes. I care about fiscal stability for journalism, man. Like, so I just want you guys to know that, like, because so often in these spaces, they tell you, okay, freelancing just isn't sustainable, right? Or, like, it just feels so big and, like, scary to be like, what am I gonna do? Like, how am I going to pitch things? Which, by the way, now there is a pointer resource for learning how to pitch all different sorts of publications, and I would highly recommend it. It's extremely helpful. But yeah, like, they don't talk to you about things like taxes, and that you can write off, like, your laptop, right? Because it is a key point of doing your job. Like, yeah, I really want, like, you guys to have the tools to feel like you can build sort of newsroom that you want to work in. Because sometimes freelancing is going to be a better option for you, but it feels like, especially in J school, the way that they teach it around here, it's like, boy howdy, like, you have no idea if that's really an option for you. And so I'm hoping to tell you guys, like, yeah, figure out your taxes and you'll be great freelancers. I'm passionate about a lot of things, like taxes and dogs.
How do you schedule freelancing gigs so that you kind of have a consistent, or as consistent as you make it?
Yeah, so I freelance in addition to working as a staff journalist right now. And so I freelance for Source New Mexico currently. God, great. Maurice is a great editor, 10 out of 10. Y'all should work with her. Anyway, I'm saying that, like, I set, like, a schedule. So I had to learn about a lot about deadlines and schedule setting for myself. But mostly what I do is I make contact with the editor, and I have a working relationship with Marisa already, so we build pitches together and then set deadlines at a later point in time. But in all honesty, it's about, it's unfortunately, there's a lot of trial and error, but I will say there's much more of a freelancer network now than ever before. And if you want to talk a little bit afterwards, I can point you to especially some very helpful, like, people on Twitter who talk extensively about taxes, how to pitch, how to manage your schedule, what places to look for, and how to know that you're being treated right as a freelancer. that would be able to answer your questions more than me. But I'm lucky enough right now that I do have a staff job, so I'm able to sort of schedule my freelancing around the stable and very nice income. Also, share your all salaries, not now. I'm glad you guys got pay raises, very happy to hear it. I mean, like, for your colleagues, share your salaries. Like, it's very key and important. And also unionize your newsrooms, but that's an opinion. So I'm glad this is going on YouTube later and will be used against me.
What about, I mean, how much of an impact do you think, because with scheduling, I kind of, you know, I have these things that conflict or things that I can't pick up, but I always end up like, is it as big a deal as it feels to say no to an editor? Like, I mean, when not picking up a pitch or something like that, because every time I have to, I feel like, well, I just burned that bridge. Like,
Oh, great question. I think that it does, like, it absolutely depends, right? And that sucks to hear, and I hate saying it, guys, but I think that you can say no, and I think it is much better. Like, I so wish that I had learned how to say no a lot faster than when I did when I first started working as a staff reporter at the New Mexican. Like, I wish I could say no to editors. And I would recommend starting now because it's, man, they are totally right in therapy. Boundaries are very important. But also being able to do the best work that you can, right? And I mean, just saying, hey, I have a conflict, but don't forget about me next time, right? And I have a rule of thumb of saying, like, okay, have I said no 3 times, right? Because that tells me that I'm way overworked, right? And I try and make sure that I'm not saying no 3 times in a row without having a sit-down chat with that particular editor of being like, okay, maybe things aren't working, right? Like, maybe right now isn't a good time, but maybe there's something to reach for in the future. And so I think that setting that boundary now is way more important than being the person that's the can-do yes person, because that creates such unrealistic expectations for yourselves and your time. Like, your time is really, really, really valuable. Like, the issue isn't like, God, what stories, like, it's not about finding, there's enough stories in the world, right? It's spending the time on the ones that you really want to do and the ones that really matter and have an impact, large or small. And so, you know, so saying yes, right, to a breaking news photo assignment might feel like, okay, well, maybe this will get me something better in the future. But I also think sitting down and actually working on the project you really want to work on and doing the long form or doing the, like, out there project is more important now. Like, they talk a lot about in journalism that, oh, you gotta serve your time, right? Like, oh, you gotta, you gotta, like, grind away. Guess you're gonna do the night's desk for forever and you'll never have a weekend, right? Like, that's not fair. Like, that's not fair to y'all because you all already work really hard to get the news out, to get the things done. You do it here. I don't think you guys have to serve your time in, like, newsrooms. So I think, yeah, say no to the editors. And I mean, I'm happy to talk shit about which editors I don't think you should be working with anyway, right? But I'm saying, like, we have to start setting these boundaries now because, like, there's already a few of us, right? Like, we have to take care of each other and ourselves in terms of what work are we doing? Are we doing the work that matters? Are we doing the things that, like, actually impact our community? Are we chasing clicks? Are we chasing, like, are we chasing the fucking algorithm, right? Are we chasing the Facebook, this pisses people off so they read it? What do we want to do? What's the kind of work we want to do? Sorry, Liam.
no, you're good. I think they're calling me. No, that was a good answer. Thank you.
Joseph! Joseph! Okay, sorry.
What's your dog's name?
This is Oliver, and he is a news hound, and he loves local journalism.
I can see it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we got him in Nebraska, where I was exiled for 9 months, but that is, hello, Joseph.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you? I'm good. Okay, I think my time is up specifically, so I will pop off, but
Well, thank you